But you have a lot of people jumping up and down saying, you know, sound. I'm like, look, 100%, that is a viable requirement. Like, I want my suppressor to be under a certain sound level, that's fine. But when you put something on the end of the gun and you know something was happening before, you need to make sure it meets all your requirements. So those are kind of like the baseline requirements is like, do you care about POI shift with an 11.5? Maybe. But do you care about it with a precision rifle? You absolutely do.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Big Tex Ordnance Podcast. Today, we've got a great show. We just came off of 2 days out at the Texas Tactical Police Officers Association SWAT competition. Out there, seeing some, dude, like, if you want to talk about meat eaters, there were some dudes out there that their biceps were bigger than my freaking leg.
Yeah.
Like, huge. Like, I'm glad that we're in Texas, and those are some solid dudes. That's for sure, right? But anyway, we ran into one of our buddies, Eric. He currently is with Norma Ammunition.
Correct.
And we decided to, after we were chatting at the event, we're like, hey, Eric, you got to come on the podcast, dude, because we got in some deep conversations out there and wanted to share it with our audience. So today we're joined by Ian, Ike, and Eric. So welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
on.
We appreciate you.
Awesome.
After 2 solid days of talking, I'm glad that you came in
to talk some more.
Some more, right?
Yeah.
We thought about taking the podcast stuff out there to set up, but then there was too much gunfire.
A lot of shooting going on.
gunfire.
I heard a guy say, shoot quieter, please, use suppressors.
I couldn't believe that, like, we were literally under one of the shooting stations today.
Yeah,
they were shooting from the roof of the building that
Yeah.
we were in. I was like, oh,
Look out, you'd see a sniper run down
That's
the
a pretty
stairs.
awesome facility down there, too.
Really
That
is.
is like top notch, you know, from what I get the chance to go over and see all sorts of stuff. And that is definitely one of the best facilities I've seen.
Yeah, we're really lucky to have it local.
There's ranges like tucked like all over the place there.
Yeah, there's ranges like there's like a jungle run you can do and stuff.
Yeah.
There's like, we shot out there the other day, but
It's pretty cool having it in
It's a
our
nice
backyard.
facility. Yeah.
Yeah, they should open it up a little bit more to the public.
I
But
could make some money off of it if they wanted to.
yeah, if they
yeah.
want to. But with FBI
Yeah, you know,
footing the
they're
bill a lot, they don't have to.
Yeah, too much.
Too much going on.
Yeah.
So, Eric,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about yourself.
So hey, I'm a pretty simple guy. I would kind of give you a little bit of my background. I came in the military. I was one of those guys that like knew I was going to be in the military when I was in high school. Like, I was delayed entry all the way. 3 days after my graduation, I'm kind of getting the details because I like to tell the stories. But like 3 days after the graduation, I joined the military. Combat engineer. All I knew is I was like, oh man, I get to like drive tanks and blow stuff up. This is, I was 17, 18 years old. So I'm like, yeah, this is gonna be really cool. So I did that 3 years. Found out like, hey man, this is like a lot of time spent in the motor pool, a lot of time not doing fun stuff that I really didn't want to do. And like, we'd be out every morning, we go out running. It'd be like 5:30 in the morning, freezing our ass off kind of thing. And I'd see the MP sitting there and I'm like, man, he's in his patrol car drinking coffee, doing whatever. And so when it came time for me to really enlist, that's kind of what I changed my job over to. So I spent, I'll give it overall like 24 years in the military, like solid. About 14 years of that, I was enlisted. So I kind of bounced around. I did my drill sergeant duty. I was in leadership positions pretty much the entire time. Squad leader, platoon sergeant, drill sergeant. So I have a great opportunity to work with amazing people that not only taught me a lot, but like helped me succeed. So a lot of the stuff that I do, you kind of look at having the right people in the right places to kind of make you or your business succeed. Right around, so we did an deployment to Iraq. This is in 2003. This is when it was the literal Wild West. We could do all sorts of crazy stuff and drive around without body armor and all that stuff on. So that was kind of an exciting event. And then about the 2006, 2007 timeframe, I think when everybody realized that the war wasn't going away, they're like, hey, we need commissioned officers to continue on this fight. So at that point, I think I was about maybe like 5 classes shy of my bachelor's degree, and they had a bunch of waivers at that time. So, I raised my hand. I was like, hey, you know what? I'll go to OCS. I did my packet, and I came out commissioned as a second lieutenant as a military police. So the funny thing is, I left my unit. I was actually a drill sergeant at the time, and when I came back, I had a butter bar on, and everybody was kind of giving me crap about it.
Oh yeah.
And so that was fun.
Kind of flipped.
One of my buddies thought it was a joke. He's like, hey man, he's like, someone put the wrong rank on your jacket, and I'm like, no, I'm a lieutenant now. So did that. Bounced over immediately to Germany. So that was my first duty station after I commissioned. And the fun thing about that is as soon as I hit the ground, I was down in Stuttgart, Germany. They're like, hey man, we're on a patch chart to deploy in like 8 or 9 months. You're the platoon leader. You're going to take the platoon downrange. Awesome platoon sergeant I had. His name was John Moyle. Great guy. He's retired now. He's actually living in the Savannah area, I think. But we had an opportunity to not only kind of pick our platoon, like what we wanted to deploy with, but we had the opportunity to train up with them the entire time, which a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't get that. You just get handed dudes and you're like, the deal.
Oh, yeah.
Here's the guys you're going to deploy with. So we had we call it a rock star team. We were down there in Jalalabad, Afghanistan, up in that, we had the city in the northern area. So we deployed there. We're doing a lot of patrols, dealing with the local population, trying to kind of quell that. So it was a good deployment up until about the last 2 months. So this is kind of a interesting story. So the last 2 months, I woke up, had about 2 months left in the deployment, and I could not see. I couldn't see straight. I had double vision, all this weird stuff going on. Yeah, it was a weird event. So and we were actually getting ready to go out on mission that morning. So you know how I am. I'm like, oh man, I want to go out with my guys, do whatever. But it took me to the aid station, and the doc's looking at me. He's like, dude, what do I know? So they literally got me pushed back to Bagram within like 2 days. And that's where they have all the, the big doctors and all that. And they're looking at me and they're like, hey man, I don't know what's wrong with you, but you can't be in country anymore. You got to go back. And I'm like, dude, I'm a platoon leader in a combat deployment. I'm signed. Not only do I have responsibility for all those guys, I've got tens of $1 million worth of equipment that I'm kind of like, all right, what's going on with this? You know what I mean? So it's a crushing blow. It's not like, oh man,
a fat bill at the end of your deployment.
Exactly. And I'm like, hey, it's not like I got shot or something like that. But I mean, I was like, I can't see. I had to wear an eye patch. It was a very weird thing. So they brought me back to Walter Reed, and that was kind of Walter Reed. We first went back to launch. It was a humbling experience because I was on a medevac flight back, and it was dudes that were in the plane, like in racks with like missing legs. And it was just like what is going on? Like, why am I here? You know what I mean? Like, I'm supposed to be back with my guys. We're supposed to be out going on missions. We've got 2 months left. And, here I am sitting in front of this poor young man that just got one of his legs blown off. So, long story short, made it back to launch school. It turns out I developed a rare autoimmune disease, which caused my immune system to start attacking a lot of the nerves in my body. So I saw rapid deterioration in a lot of what I was doing over the next like 3 or 4 months. They finally got me to Walter Reed, got me on a whole program of meds and stuff like that. And that was like, for me, I think at the time I was like 32. I was at the peak of my physical fitness. I was, I was deployed in combat. I was a brand new lieutenant. I'm like, my career is over. That's what I'm thinking in my mind. And at that point in time, there was a lot of like, hey, we're gonna med board. Yeah. You're done. So I'm like, in my mind, I'm preparing my family. Like, okay, this is going to be a major change for us. Got me on my medication. All the symptoms went away. I mean, obviously, I had a lot of issues with the medication too as well. But I kind of like mentally prepared myself as like, I'm going to beat this. So I went through the whole process of going out, running every day or walking or lifting weights and built myself back up to where kind of I was within those limitations. And so I ended up going to a med board. I got a Army lawyer, a major. And before I went in there, I had letters from commanders. I had, former CSMs that I worked with. And, they said, hey, look, we're just going to let you know right now, there's like a very little chance that we're going to keep you on board. They're probably going to medically retire you. So I was like going in there like, hey, I'm going to fight this to the end. And it wasn't an in-person board. I didn't fly to DC. I was in Germany. So there was like basically a video teleconference type thing. So sat in there and I mean, I had multiple 06 colonels come in to testify on my behalf. Like, hey man, we didn't even know anything was wrong with him if you didn't tell us. And so long story short is they ended up keeping me in. Like they blacked out the board. They said, step out of the room. I came back in like 2 minutes later. They're like, hey, you're about one of the like 1% of the people we're letting stay in right now. So congratulations, best of luck. So I rolled on for about another 8 years. And I got to the point where I was getting a little older, and I was like, hey man, I'm a senior captain, getting looked at for major. Is this really what I want to be in my career? I'm going against guys that are 10, 15 years younger than me. I'm a Mustang, so to speak. So made a decision. We retired from Hawaii and moved back to Florida at that point. So that kind of like ends my military career. Most of my experiences in training and equipping. So that's kind of segues into what I do now. So retiring straight from the military, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Ended up working for about a year for a nonprofit. It's a local area to where I was, and it was basically going out, helping homeless vets, trying to get them off the street, get them connected with resources. Enjoyed the job. However, I'm a little bit more, I'll say I'm a little high strung kind of guy. So I wanted to do something where I was like really able to like see products move and, and see things happen. So there was a job opening that came up on, like, I think Indeed or one of those things for Knights Armament Company, and I'm like, oh man, I kind of know Knights Armament Company. They made our RAS. they made the RAS.
Yeah.
And I mean, we joke, but like the RAS is the iconic thing from Knights Armament. That's kind of like what made the company where we at. And I knew about the sniper gun, but the M110, but it wasn't something that I really messed with. And I said, let me apply. And I walked in off the street and actually got interviewed and a job offer so I started working as inside sales there. And I will tell you from my experience, it is a phenomenal team of people over there that I learned from. Like 5 years. Like I wouldn't be where I am right now doing what I'm doing without, like Jack Luba came in and, guy's got a lot of patience, because you got to ask a lot of questions. Knights Armament, man, you've got 40, 50 years of history, whatever, different systems. We have customers calling up like, hey, what about the legacy motto? And I'm like, whoa, man, I don't know. Like it. So that's a steep learning curve on that. And you got Ash S over there. He kind of dug in and we learned a lot about shooting and just what he's doing with Quantified Performance and the community. It's an amazing thing. So, I mean, you're talking spending 5 years in a company where I kind of cut my teeth doing government law enforcement sales and learning not just from those guys, but from Trey Knight and Reed Knight himself. I mean, we're talking a guy that probably knows more about firearms and history than you will ever forget.
Yeah.
We all like to think we know, and I mean the dude has a museum above his factory dedicated to the history of firearms. So it was an amazing opportunity, and like I said, I have nothing but love for those guys over there, and we still talk all the time. We text back and forth, talking shit about what's going on in the industry, and kind of laughing about stuff. But a great crew over there.
Small crew though, according to everybody on the internet, because they're purposely not making enough guns.
Yeah,
right? They're purposely not making enough guns.
Yeah. So a funny story about that is like you go online, if you go on any of the Facebook groups or whatever, there's only a few companies out there that are actually have representatives that are sales reps that are actually answering questions from a random dude. You know what I mean? Like you can go out and buy a gun and you got a question about the muzzle device. You'll put it on that, KC owners group or whatever, tactics and applications. Somebody's talking about it and you're going to get an answer from the man himself. You're going to get, Trey may chime in every once in a while.
Yep.
You've LMT. I'll give LMT. They've got Joe over there. He does some good stuff. There's only a few companies that are doing that. You look at SIG, FN, and it's nothing against them.
Yeah.
But man, if I got an issue with my rifle, it's I'm going and I understand you do want to go directly with customer service at the end of the day. But if you want to try to get an answer, that is kind of the price. That's kind of like into the price you pay for it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You're getting, there's been incidents with Trey Knight has jumped in on there and like, okay, this is what you need to do. We'll take care of you. Or Jack Lube would be like, send me an email in the morning.
Yeah.
And I think that's what separates those small companies that are doing stuff so far and above, what some of the bigger companies are doing.
Yeah. And with today's age of social media, you've got to, especially if you're a small company, even the big companies should get a clue on this.
Yes.
But the small companies that are able to sound stuff off in their in their Facebook groups.
Yeah.
It's like having another customer service employee.
Yeah.
It really is, because you can go in and, on Big Tex Ordnance group, friends group, you can go in and ask a question, and typically you'll get like 3 or 4 smart ass answers, but then you're going to get,
you got to do that, man.
But then you'll get the info, or somebody will be like, hey, have you did this? Have you tried that? Or no, do not use a screwdriver to put that muzzle device on.
Don't soak it in water, please, guys. You don't need to do that. It doesn't work. I'll tell you that right now. But anyway.
But that is essential nowadays in 2022, going into 2023, is to have that Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or all three, ability to do that, engage with customers.
Joe's always active in the LMT group.
He is good, and he's a great guy, man.
All the time.
And I think they kind of like, the big companies need to kind of take a look at that and say, okay, man, it's kind of scary when you get to a point where you're so big, you don't really need to do that anymore, and you're like, ooh. So you see it. There's certain companies in the industry that are really good at it, and there's others that are not.
Yeah.
But so I think they that couple. So in kind of my philosophy, because I do most of my experiences in government and law enforcement sales, and I do kind of bounce over to the commercial side every once in a while. But if I sell you a rifle or I sell you ammunition, like right now I'm doing, who cares about ammunition? But it's all special purpose stuff. You have an issue and you give me a phone, I get phone calls at like 8:00 at night from SWAT teams. They're like, hey man, we just did an op and we had this, situation happen. What do we need to do to fix this? Or just those random questions. And that's kind of like my job and that's kind of like, you get what you pay for. Yes, you're paying more money for that Knights gun or that LMT gun. But the expectation is that you kind of get that level of customer service and treating the small agencies, the 20 guns that Martin County down in Florida buy, the same as the guy who's buying, 150 guns from, FBI or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
It's a hard balance, but it's kind of why I do the job. It's kind of why I love the job too. So it's pretty much the way I think that's going to be where the successful companies are in the future versus what's going on right now.
Were you into firearms whatsoever when you transitioned out?
So instantly, I shot a lot. I was into guns, but because being in the military, and I spent 7 years in Germany. I spent 2.5 years living in Hawaii. We're moving around every couple of years. I wasn't able to get the stuff that I wanted, where I kind of was like, oh yeah, let me drag this around and store it and whatever. So when I came out, that's where I really started picking up a lot of that stuff, and specifically, shooting fundamentals, precision gas gun stuff, talking to Ash and Jack and kind of getting that. Prior to being in the military, I had never shot anything past 300 yards, with an AR and a red dot. But it makes it that much easier when you have the better equipment.
Yeah.
Right. You're like, oh yeah, I can do this. The first time I did, I was like, oh yeah, this is pretty easy. To be honest, I've sat in some of those matches, those Quantified Performance matches, and kind of like just listening to people talk. And it was a younger kid. He's like, I got more out of this 2-day match training wise than I did go to, a class, where I spent 800 rounds or whatever. Not to say that classes, they're fundamentals but it was that level of shooting, seeing people from the Army marksmanship unit and some of those professional shooters. You got, guys like the dudes from Las Vegas crew, like Colin and Jeremy Ty, that come out and then just, smoke stages, and you see them, you're like, oh, okay. Maybe I should be doing what he's doing if I want to hit targets.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's kind of, taken away. That's kind of like something they're giving back to the community, and they don't even really maybe not realize it, but that's kind of what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know when I first started shooting matches, you'd see those dudes come up and they would do the same thing every time when they got ready to shoot a stage.
Yeah.
The same thing down to, they load their gun, check their gun, get a sight picture, reholster, do it again, get another sight picture, reholster, adjust their ear pro. It was all the same, and then get another sight picture. Okay, cool. And they do that every time. And you're like, all right, well, he just did that for 5 stages in a row. And then you go and look at the score at the end, and you're like, oh, yeah, he's
good.
Yeah.
He's good.
Maybe I should
what's
do that.
What's that GM by his name? And why did he win? Why is he significantly faster than me? Because he's doing the same thing every time.
Yeah.
It's that repeated accuracy or repeated precision on that. Yeah. You can gain so much out of competing. It's
And I'll tell you, man, if the gas gun guys, the semi-automatic precision rifle guys, kind of banded together like the PRS guys, it'd be a force to be reckoned with. And I think they are starting to do that. And I think that's because people spend a lot. I mean, honestly, look at the industry over the last 5 to 10 years. I mean, people spend a lot of money on AR platform rifles, and then when you get a good gun, hey man, you can go out and plink with it, but like you want to be able to shoot it at some point. And even if you are, I mean, the first time I went out there, I would want to say I was humbled, but I knew I sucked. So I wasn't really humbled. I was like, I knew I was going to get away from this. But I mean, the first time I cleaned a stage, I was like, oh man, this is awesome. This is kind of what I want to do. And I mean, unfortunately, I'm so busy now, it's kind of backed off, but it is definitely for shooters, man, where you can take a 1 to 6 to go out there. And, you hear a lot of people complain, it's like, oh, I can't be competitive. But I mean, the reality is, it's like, just go out and shoot.
Yeah.
Just go out and shoot and learn.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's all it is.
any day out shooting at a range.
Score
learning.
89 out of 89, and you're the last guy, you still learn more than if you didn't show up.
Yep. For sure.
That's a quote from Ash, by the way, too. I steal that from him.
They're doing great things with those matches. That's I'm excited to see that take off.
We're talking about trying to get them down this direction for 2023. That way we can get in on it a little bit. But we'll put links in the show notes for Quantified Performance on YouTube. We'll put some links up there to get that information, since we're doing just a whole show, and we'll charge Ash for the
give him like royalties or something.
Yeah. We'll give.
Yeah, he owes me something, I think, too, like a hat or something.
Right.
No.
I talked with him at SHOT Show for a little while, and he's just like a book of knowledge.
Well, he literally wrote the book.
Yeah, I literally wrote the book, and he has a book of knowledge.
Yeah. It's really cool. So you transitioned from Knights to Norma.
Yeah, so an opportunity, kind of like working at Knights, I was, you guys have seen how the industry has been over the last couple of years, and pushing out products and stuff like that. And I actually spent probably my last year to maybe 8 months at Knights just doing clip-on night vision. So I have some good stories about cool stuff that I did with that too as well. And that was honestly, man, if I could just stuck with doing clip-on night vision. You see a lot of these guys that are out there doing night vision stuff, and that, that's cool. But going out with snipers to demos and stuff like that, really it's really fun. And I got some cool stories I can talk to you about that. But so opportunity came up for Norma. It was RUAG at the time, kind of Norma RUAG. And, they kind of approached me and were like, hey, man, we're looking for somebody to kind of run down this law enforcement government program. We are kind of expanding. So I looked at to me as an opportunity to kind of expand my reach into that law enforcement, government community, snipers specifically, because a lot of those guys are using ammo more than they are buying $5,000 rifles. You know what I mean? I love SR25. I've got a couple of them, and I would recommend that gun for your agency using a gas gun. But it kind of gave me a better opportunity to kind of ply my trade, and we have very specific special purpose ammunition that we provide to the snipers. And for example, glass breaking rounds, armor piercing stuff, minimal, back pressure. It's all sorts of weird stuff that we have. So there's a need for that out there. And if you talk to a lot of the crew that's in the sniper community, law enforcement, is that gold medal match, 175 grain, 168 standard, duty round. It's not cutting it anymore. Not that it's a bad round, but there is an opportunity for over penetration. It's a great match round. Take it out, shoot steel with it, paper, whatever. But there, that and 6.5 with a standard match round is not the best. So there is, law enforcement snipers, when they have to shoot, maybe there's barriers in between, and they've got to think about, hey, I've got glass. What does that do to the bullet? Kind of does all sorts of stuff to the bullet. Oh yeah. If I've got something heavy or they've got body armor on, can I penetrate that and still hit the target? So it's kind of given me an opportunity to go out and ply my trade a little bit more and learn more. So instead of spending time on what the gun does, I'm looking more at effect on target and how I can help those guys do whatever they got to do.
And Norma's based out of?
So our company is in Savannah, Georgia. We've got our factory there where we are doing a lot of stuff. But we also have Norma Precision or Norma AB, which is in Sweden. That's where you're getting all your premier hunting rounds, your match rounds, the 6.5 Creedmoor, 6.5 PRC. If you get a chance, ever go on. I was telling the guys earlier today, Recoil TV has a 2-part series where they're actually in the Norma factory, and they go
nice.
through, like, the first part is, it's like, I think 10 minutes each video, where they go through, here's how we make our brass, because Norma brass is made to be reloaded again and again. Here's our brass, here's our primers, here's our bullets, here's how we put it together, and it's just kind of a cool inside look at. I mean, they've been doing it since don't quote me, I think it's like 1902. They've been doing it for longer than a lot of the American companies.
Yeah.
And then we have our Swiss Defense factory in Switzerland. That is, they're doing the Swiss P products, which is our various sniper and military solutions that we have for people out there. So. We have a whole kind of portfolio we can dip into depending on what you need.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And then you're responsible for all North America?
Pretty much,
or
yeah.
US?
All of the United States, so to speak.
Cool.
Yeah. Any kind of government, whatever, orders that come in or any opportunities like that, I kind of jump on and we make it happen. I've got a great contract manager who handles all that inside stuff and, make sure that we don't go to jail. Because, whenever you get into contracts, when you start looking at that kind of stuff, it is a lot of stuff that needs to be looked at. And, yeah, that's how we do it. That's how we roll. It's a growing company. I will guarantee everybody listening to this podcast within the next couple of years, you're going to see a lot more of Norma. You'll probably see me. You'll probably see our products on shelves, and that's kind of where we're going for the future.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And you specifically high caliber sniper type, hunting type ammo.
Yeah. And we also do regular training ammunition. So we've got a whole suite of like self-defense stuff. We got a monolithic hollow point that's pretty legit, for standard self-defense. We also have most of the stuff that we're doing in the U.S. is the FMJ stuff, because that's a little easier to get on with the 124 grain 9mm, 223 55 grain. So that's kind of what we're pushing out there. But we do have I'll tell you about this. We do have a reduced hazard training ammunition. It's basically a frangible round. It's actually on a FLETC contract for training, but it's got lead-free Syntox primers. So it's not only lead-free, it's got all those heavy metals that are bad for you. Basically, when you shoot it, like at an indoor range or outdoor range in that kind of environment, you're reducing your exposure rate to all those chemicals. So
nice.
that came out of a demand from Europe that we kind of just switched over and did it over here. So we are making those in-house in Savannah as well.
Cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
What's if you can talk about it, because this piqued my interest when you said it specifically. What's a glass break round?
So basically, when you're firing a sniper round at any kind of like heavy or angled glass, the round will do all sorts of weird things. It may start, you may get a lot of spalling. You may shatter. It may start yawing. Jacket may break off. So what we have is in 338 and 308, it's a solid flat nose boat tail round. So it's made out of a brass alloy type thing. And what that does is it punches through the window with minimal deviation. So it gives that sniper the opportunity. Is like, okay, if I have to take a shot through the window, there's somebody behind me or there's a backstop or something like that, I know that this is kind of where my round's going to go and who it's going to hit, and it's going to neutralize the target. So it's pretty sciencey. It's sciencey enough where it is.
I was just about to say science.
Yeah, it is, and it's sciencey enough that it is regulated by the ATF as an armor piercing round.
Okay. Oh,
wow.
Which is kind of painful for me doing paperwork, but
Right.
So I won't be able to buy that from Walmart.
no, not anytime soon.
Damn.
Yeah. Good thing is, yeah, that's how it is.
We can't shoot it at the indoor
That's not
range.
like one of those things that you want to. If you ever get your hands on something like that, you don't want to flex on Instagram on.
Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna end up like the guy with all those PVS 30s that the FBI came knocking at the door, like, "Hey guys, remember that PVS 30 that you bought for $3,500 like a year ago? We're gonna need that back."
It was like the I don't know if you saw the people in Houston that bought the surplus
Cases.
Oh yeah, the cases.
They were like the
Crate of
rifle
M16s.
cases.
Oh yeah. The 16. It was like
a
a bunch of Colt M16s
Yeah.
in there,
Yeah,
full
yeah.
auto. I'm like, "Hey guys, I just found 11."
Yeah.
Yeah. There was somebody.
I mean, hell, those uppers alone, you just sold them to cloners for probably good money.
Oh, sorry, we only found the lowers. I don't know
Yeah.
what happened to the uppers.
Yeah.
Yeah, where did they go?
There's only lowers.
It's
was
the only
12
part
of them,
that
but
they're
there's
really
only
worried
11.
about.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the only part that
It's funny too, man. It's like that kind of stuff only happens to people that are not interested in guns.
Exactly.
It's usually just like some old man or somebody that's like, hey, my grandfather passed away and I found a Uzi in his closet or a Luger or some kind of like regulated thing, and you're like, oh, what do we do?
When we were at the old range, you were gone. Some old woman came in and her husband passed away, and she's like, hey, my husband used to be like a big gun dude back in the day, and he passed away. I'm getting older. And she's like, can you come to my house and, tell me what I have, buy what you have. Dude, he had like machine guns, like all this stuff, but he didn't have any of the paperwork for it. So they were like, you need to we can't buy it. You can't sell it.
Risk a federal
I'm
case?
not here.
Yeah.
Like, let's just,
I'm not here right now.
I have not seen
We
this.
are leaving.
let's just disappear the stuff now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, people joke about it and they're like, I'm like, okay, man, you want to take that risk, dude. It's like on you. I'm good. I enjoy my freedom a little bit too much. Like, I don't want to sit in jail.
Right?
No, I'm good.
I'm too pretty for
They
jail.
feed you 3 times a day. You get to work out, hang out with all your friends.
There you go, man. Make new friends.
Yeah,
Make new friends.
You were talking about that frangible round that y'all
Yeah,
have.
you were speaking about Frangible and people wanting to actually use it. As
Okay,
opposed
so
to,
and I will.
This is before we hit record.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'll disclaimer this. This is my personal opinion. This is not like whatever. So I've been approached by. So we have frangible ammo. There's a lot of other companies that make frangible ammo. Generally, it is designed for training. Yes, there's some instances where like the Navy would be like, okay, we're going to use it in the ship to cut down on ricochets and all that. But there has been an interest in using frangible rounds for duty ammunition. I will tell you, I'm against that. Number one is because frangible ammunition, you load it in your magazine, whether it's pistol or rifle. I mean, it's going to break apart a little bit, so things can happen. So whether you keep your magazine, you're not downloading it after every shift or downloading it after you come back from concealed carry. You're walking around all day. It gets hot, gets humid, things happen. The rounds kind of break up. They're not really designed for that type of thing. So, and on top of that, I mean, a hollow point round, jacketed or monolithic or whatever, that has got penetration from 12 to 18 inches is kind of like where you want to be at. So the frangible may or may not do that, because I don't think the FBI does any testing on frangible ammunition that I've seen. And if you get shot with frangible, it will kill you. Like, I don't want to get shot by.
I'm not volunteering.
Exactly. It will, but it's just like there's a lot of issues. And then also, a lot of guys that are running their rifle suppressed, you can run into issues with frangible suppressed.
Oh, yeah.
And it also is a lower, some of the frangible ammunition is loaded lower velocity. So it may not cause things to cycle. So there's a whole like level of things that you have to look at if you're talking about like, okay, I'm going to run frangible for duty ammunition. Just that's my opinion from facts that I've gathered and from what I've seen, and I wouldn't recommend it unless somebody told me that, hey man, I want this and I'm going to buy it. I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm not going to tell you no, but because you'll just go to somebody else and get it.
Right.
But yeah, so we do have a duty round for the rifle that is designed. It's a 69 grain. It's a pretty heavy round. We call it the sticks action, and it is designed for that reduced penetration, but it's still a jacketed hollow point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just more expansion.
More
correct?
expansion kind of slows it down a little bit, kind of keeps it, deposits energy in the wound faster, and kind of keeps it like that. Again, nobody wants to get shot with it.
Science.
Yep. Science and shit.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Science. Painful science.
That's like a whole, like, looking at like ballistic studies and like ballistic gel testing.
Oh,
and,
man.
And like bullet weights. I mean, you can get so nerdy and like hardcore science into like, I'm carrying a 5-inch Glock. I want to carry 124 grain, like, or, a 16-inch rifle, or shooting matches or shooting people. Like, you can get so deep into
It's
a
a thing, man.
wormhole
Ballistics
of
is
ammo.
a big thing. Man.
And then it's going to do something totally different. We shot a guy in 2004 in Iraq through his windshield with 5.56.
Yeah. Probably 60 grain. Yeah.
Went right here.
Yeah.
And it looked like it came out the back of his head. Dude knocked out, sitting in his front seat, blood
travel
dripping
around the
out.
skull?
Traveled around his skull. Dude just woke up. We pulled him out of the car, searched the car. Dude just woke up. He's like, "Help me!" I'm like, okay.
Not dead?
Not dead. Knocked out.
Yeah.
Not dead. But it just traveled under his skin. all
I was
the way around.
wondering if when it hit that glass, whether it yawed.
Oh, yeah,
and
it could have been.
It, instead of coming in like a penetrator, it came in as like a smack.
Oh yeah,
and like moved through his
and
skull.
just crazy stuff. And that's like, dude got shot in the head.
Yeah.
And the bullet didn't work right.
I thought you were going to say when you shot somebody, it was going to be with your Bradley.
No, well that's totally.
That's a different level of
Or
ballistics.
a
too.
40 millimeter.
Yeah,
like,
no.
That's different ballistics.
No,
like,
that was totally different. 2004, totally different
Yeah.
deployment.
That was the Wild
but-
West, man.
Yeah,
For real.
But it was bullets do weird stuff
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
And wanting to downgrade to frangible, I can't even
Yeah.
Don't get me started.
There, I mean, I said there's people that use them and whatever, but I'm like, ooh, stick with what you know, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much testing. I mean, like the FBI standards. I mean,
Yeah.
those standards were developed for a reason.
Yeah. And I do think, I mean, obviously there's things out there outside of that work because they're not testing everything, but I also think like, hey man, it's like generally known within the firearms and I will say ballistics community. Well, let's make that a thing.
Yeah, there you go.
But it's generally known that that's kind of the standards you want to look for in a self-defense or duty round. You know how it's going to perform through a car
yeah.
door or glass or whatever like that. So, you know, I will tell you right now, a car door or a piece of wood. Frangible was probably not going to do much after that. It's going to turn into dust.
You brought up something that you mentioned prior to the podcast and we were talking about earlier, but government testing and companies selling to government agencies or putting their equipment up for testing.
Correct.
With government agencies. You said you wanted to touch on that, and that's a good segue right into that.
I think it is. So you'll see if you're staying and you know you're looking at Instagram and Facebook or whatever, you know you'll see companies. I mean, we're talking about companies right now that are moving so far forward in advances of technology. You know, in the firearms community, from scopes to suppressors to rifles, you know, precision guns, whatever it is, you know, to meet that need. But you'll see people will be like, oh, you know, you submitted this gun to the ATF or you did this for the FBI, you're a bootlegger. And I'm like, hey, man, so the reality is, you know, whether Joe's out there testing his gun on the range or doing whatever, is the companies that, for the most part, I should segue for the most part, if the government is doing a full and open contract or competition, for a product, you're going to get a large number of good companies that are going to put forth their best effort to meet or exceed those standards. The standards are very cut and dry when you get the requirements document.
It's very clear cut.
Yeah, it's like, okay, FBI. I'm going to use suppressors for example because I was like heavily involved in this whole meat thing of the FBI suppressor program. You talk about, here's where we want our sound level. First of all, this is the weight we want. This is the sound level we want to meet the minimum requirements, and it's all graded on it. If I put this suppressor on, I expect a POI shift of, here's the minimal deviation of the POI shift. Here's if I put this suppressor on, how does it affect accuracy? Let's go through the 15 different solicitations, see how it affects accuracy. And then the final thing is flash. And then they also, I think, did a back pressure test or whatever, which was kind of their segue. Their requirement was going from the standard cans that they had. And I won't mention the names who they had, but it's like, we went from this can, we want a pressure reduction can that's going to make our operators, you know, be able to preserve their hearing, but at the same time, you know, reduce back pressure on that gun. So when they tested that, they're taking you have to meet the minimum requirements. So there's some I'll tell you right now, there's some good stuff going on Instagram with like sound testing. You have Pew Science doing a lot of, like, I know you guys heard of them. Jay, he's doing some great stuff with the sound testing. But you have a lot of people jumping up and down saying, you know, sound. And I'm like, look, 100%, that is a viable requirement. Like, I want my suppressor to be under a certain sound level. That's fine. But when you put something on the end of the gun, and you know something was happening before, you need to make sure it meets all your requirements. So those are kind of like the baseline requirements is like, do you care about POI shift with an 11.5? Maybe. But do you care about it with a precision rifle? You absolutely do. So that's why you got companies like KGM coming out with a really badass suppressor that wins an FBI solicitation because they exceeded the requirements from every other company that submitted a product. So you know that at a bare minimum, that product it's not BUBBA approved. It's approved by the federal government. Whether you agree with the FBI or whether you agree with SOCOM or whoever's doing that testing, you know that at a minimum has met or exceeded the requirements for that agency. So in addition to that, after they get done with their basic requirements testing, they do an end user eval. The end user eval is they actually have dudes that are Marines or door kickers from HRT or, whoever it may be. They run these suppressors through a whole gauntlet of testing, and they get to evaluate the end users. Okay, I like this one because it came off easier, it mounted easier or whatever. I got this one because it really reduced flash. When I was under night vision, it was like I didn't see the flash. I'm just using these examples, but these are the things that those end users evaluate. And then they run it. They'll take 1 or 2 cans and they say, okay, we're going to run these cans up to our requirement is 10,000 rounds. So the cans are run to 10,000 rounds. So as a consumer, I know as a consumer, if I buy an Huxworks, call it Huxworks now, we know that suppressor, at the bare minimum, it was tested to that protocol for 10,000 rounds.
Yep.
And they're doing some cool stuff, man. Like I got it. Those are the guys I wanted to beat when I was at Knights Armament for that program. But they did some cool stuff. They came out. It was a lighter can at the time, and I think when those PRT cans, we've already had that. They're already out. They were already going to people when I was there. But for that FBI solicitation, the public knows that when I buy that suppressor, it met those minimum requirements for that customer to say, hey, I'm going to spend $5 million over 4 years on these cans and outfit every FBI, HRT, and SWAT team member on it. Or hey, this upper receiver that I sold to SOCOM, it met 15,000 round standard for accuracy or whatever whatever that requirement is be. So when people when companies automatically are like, oh no, we don't want to do that, or when people on the internet say, oh, we don't, bootlicker, like I remember when Huxworks came out with that post, it was probably like 1,000 comments of people just like just going after them, and I'm like, guys, like these contracts, what people are like, these contracts, although to you they may not seem like a big deal, but to that business, they're keeping that for the next 5 years. They know they're going to keep that business, and whatever the commercial market does, and you guys see it now, the commercial market is going down. So they've got that balance of, hey man, we've got this money coming in. I can keep my people, because at the end of the day, there's Americans employed in these companies. Some of them are our friends, and so it kind of.
Well, and it's free testing on the end user. So if
is.
you're like, hey, I want to buy this can.
Exactly.
You already know it's gone through all this, far more testing than I could do.
Yeah.
Or, how many people are out there on the internet shooting 10,000 rounds through multiple cans?
A lot of people say they will.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But they don't. And again, I'm not like championing like, okay, we're not like, we love big government, but as a company, at the end of the day, I've got that testing done on that product, and it met or surpassed their requirements. So therefore, I can at least have that baseline. It's not just. It's just like we were talking about when you post something online for help, you've got at least probably 5 to 10 smart ass comments. Oh man, it's great, and I'm like, okay, like let's get to the reality here. So it's important for the way ahead, because what happens is, and I'm using suppressors as an example, is the way ahead for other companies is they're like, well, damn, they won that. Let's make our suppressor even better.
Yep.
I want to make one quieter or lighter or stronger, or whatever that requirement that they want to meet. And therefore, it comes back to us as commercial users. Is like, man, I have the ability to buy that. Look at an NT4.
Yeah.
Look at we're talking about a suppressor that's been in service for decades. Turns around and it goes, because it's been proven in combat, and it's marine proof. It turns out, Marine Corps is buying, 27,000.
We're still
whatever
buying
the number
them
is.
today.
They're going to buy them for the next 4 years, and they're the first military service. I mean, the Marine Corps. Who'd imagine the Marine Corps would be the most forward-thinking service when it came to suppressors? Like, hey, we're going to outfit all of our regular dudes with cans on all our rifles, and they had the NT4 because they knew that was the can that was going to be marine proof. We wanted it to be quiet. We know it does that. We want to kind of reduce flash. We want to do that. But what we really want is that durability. And that's kind of where, like, Knights Armament, if you look at the, people are talking, oh, it's accuracy and all this stuff. It's like, those guns were designed to last. And that's kind of like, that end user, if they selected a Knights gun or an LMT gun or a Geissele gun, excuse me, whatever it is, that guy that's getting that same thing, it's been tested and it's been used. So it's a way to think about it. I think a lot of people are like, go to that, like, oh, I'm sitting in my mom's basement, I'm just going to like argue kind of with people on the internet, but it is important and it helps people out.
It drives innovation too, because like now you have like the incentive for these companies to spend a lot of money developing these cans, or parts or whatever it is for these contracts, and not everyone's going to win. So now Knights comes out with a better can. I know of another company that has another can that was in that.
Well, look at SIG. SIG's got they've got a backflow can now too, and it's kind of like
there's all these other companies. Where the consumer market, the civilian market, ends up being better because of it.
Absolutely.
Because now we have all these other options, and then also going back to like the testing thing. You could come out with a new can, but now you have this new can that's already undergone all this testing. You might have this new can that looks good on paper, but is it going to last? Is it going to hold up? Exactly. How's it going to be after 5,000 rounds or 4,000 or 10,000? I think there's a lot of positive things that come to the civilian side that a lot of people just are too narrow-minded to realize.
Look at the contract or the testing and the adoption of when they wanted to get rid of the M9, right? Wanted to get rid of the service pistol, and they went with the M17, right?
So now we have the 19X,
right? So
the 50, like
the 320, right? The 320 family, 365, all that stuff
came from that.
Yeah, M&P 2.0, all that stuff came from that program, came from a government solicitation program.
And it works the same in optics. And
I was about to say optics and flashlights.
So I mean, look at and this is just my opinion, but I mean, you look at Mod Light. I mean, as a company, 4 or 5 years ago, you're kind of like, oh, okay, they're cool. But I mean, we're talking about blowing up to the point where I was like, I would go out to demos, and I'm going to like these companies, and they're like, oh man, like you've got Mod Lights. I was like, and people start, excuse me. So people start coming out with, this stuff, and then other people see it, and then when you start seeing agencies adopt it, you're like, okay, this is obviously they've ran it through enough testing to know that this is good enough for their guys to use. Federal Reserve Bank or whoever, you know what I mean? Like it's like some of these government agencies out there that I've visited, like surprising to see the amount of work they put in. And I know it's your tax dollars, but you should be happy to know that the majority of these agencies and these organizations, when they do select a product, they are doing their due diligence to make sure that they're, getting a product that's not going to screw over the tax dollar, the taxpayer, and at the end of the day, they're going to buy whatever they need. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, we know that they're getting a good product. So it's when I start seeing those, and that company blew up out of nowhere. And then you start seeing all these flashlight companies, some are like the meme tier companies. And, but what's funny about that, going back to like competition, is like the TLR7 Alpha from Streamlight is like, oh, it's only 500. It's not good enough. It's, whatever. That won the ATF or the FBI solicitation. That was the flashlight that they developed for their Glock 19s or whatever product they're using at the time. And that's fielding, thousands of those to every, or however many, is getting in the field. So that optic, even though people don't like, Streamlight may not be the newest and the greatest, that specific optic was designed and tested, for an agency, and it went through that thing. So everything's a balance. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of like the takeaway from it is there's people doing cool stuff on the internet. There's firearms trainers that do a lot of testing. That's real good too, because those guys put in a lot of work. And they get to see when things fail. They get to see students on the line.
Yeah, you got 20 things on the line right there, and you're seeing that every week.
Yeah, and you're like, oh man, this optic keeps falling apart, or this,
hey, there's a
whatever.
clue.
Like maybe don't get that, And so that's kind of my opinion on it. And I know people will argue it and get mad and blast me, but it's like I've seen enough. I will tell you, like, to the point where government solicitation for a product, we'll say a rifle, and I know. I'll give you an example of a government agency that was like, we want a new rifle. Here's how it needs to be packed when you ship to us. It needs to be packed with 6 magazines, 3 Magpul, 3 metal, or whatever it is. It needs to have the trigger this here. You need to have the manual in the box. When you open up the box, it's got to have the technical data in tab A, tab B. And what that does is that weeds out all the guys that are kind of like, all right, I'm half-assing this.
Oh,
if you're not, it's just like you guys. I mean, you guys are running a warehouse. How many times can you afford to have a customer say, hey man, I ordered something, but I didn't get what I got. You want to get it right. And it's the same thing in there. That's kind of like their first glimpse at that company. If they don't have a relationship with it, saying, okay, man, we did a solicitation for a new rifle. We asked for this, this, and this, but you left
couldn't
out.
even get that.
You couldn't even get that
right.
far. So what they literally will do, not all the time, but a lot of them are like, okay, we'll clip it back up and put it off the side because it costs a lot of money to do all this testing.
Oh, yeah.
So I've got 15 rifles I've got to run through. I've already cut a third of that right out the bat because these dudes, they sent me a Donald Trump rifle with a picture on him or something. You know what I mean? Like it's whatever. I use that as an example because it's real.
Oh,
it happened. But so that's kind of where we go. And
it's like a Trump 1911.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like it's a learning process for people, and to kind of jump into that, so I spent a lot of time with people who randomly emailing me or, hey man, how do I get into the industry, or how do I do this? And I'm like, or what do I need to know? I'm like, honestly, like being a good shooter and knowing guns and firearms is one thing, but can you read a requirements document? Can you, even outside of government, can you assess the market as a commercial guy and see, where, because you're going to advise your boss, okay, man, these 22 Creedmoor or whatever round that there's a demand for, you got to be able to advise your engineers and say, hey, man, there's a demand for this right now, commercially or militarily, like 6-ARC or whatever, like we were talking about ammunition, or, hey, we need a new flashlight. There's a desire in the community for a tan 1-8 ATAC-R. I think we could sell a lot of those commercially or whatever. I mean, I'm using those examples, but it's like, and you have to be able to judge that. Guess what? If you can't do that, but you can shoot real good, you're not going to last very long.
Right.
So the reality is like you're going to be able to judge the industry, but can you send an email? Can you respond to a customer and get them what they need? Can you get that call at 8:30 at 9 o'clock at night where something's going wrong and come up with a solution? So that's kind of like my opinion piece on that. What I tell people whenever they're interested in that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, how many times we have conversation about stuff that we're looking at, bringing on or everything, and you're like, yeah, we could bring it on, but how much are we actually going to sell? How much demand is there for that product,
for this widget or whatever it is?
Because two people online said they wanted it.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that's horrible in the industry is people will be like, I think it's the Bill Geisley gang where they're like, Gib ODG rails, and everybody, like, they come on there and I'm like, hey man, just because like 5 guys on the internet said that they want this doesn't, some of that offhand stuff will sell, but it is a lot more work to do something like a one-off, like, 100 run of something. Then, I want to do 10,000 of something.
Oh yeah.
In ammunition, I want to do like millions of stuff.
Right.
We're not building a new.
We measure in pallets.
Yeah, we're not doing a new round for 10 guys that want a round. You know? It's like so, and you see that online is like that where that beast kind of rears its head, and they're like, oh yeah, we need this new thing, and you're like,
we're not going to do a 262 Ackley improved, or I made up a caliber.
It's like exactly. It's
that'd be interesting though.
Yeah.
Just make it up, man, and just do it. But yeah, it's a beast out there, and there's a lot of people that are kind of like, they try to drive that train, and then you got to kind of like separate yourself from like, this is reality, this is what the market's going to handle, and
well, it has to be financially viable.
Exactly.
It's like, cool, yeah, an OD Green run of XYZ would be awesome, but if you need to make 1,000 parts for it to be done, and only 100 people buy it, what are you going to do with the other 900?
Absolutely.
So there has to be enough demand there to actually justify doing it.
Speaking of which, have you seen our new ODG
mod buttons
and clear anno?
All right, I need to look
They're
at
beautiful.
that after this. I need to look at that.
They're really nice.
Yeah.
They're really nice. That's our first product placement that I would go look at them.
They're
in stock currently.
They're up online right now.
Yeah.
I have a question. So for like the ammo side of things,
okay,
I don't know if you can go into it, but like, what is a police department or Uncle Sam looking for like a duty round? Like what is their testing process or their requirements?
The majority of large agencies or most agencies are going to look, and it just depends on where you're at. For a pistol round, they're going to want a 124 grain. That's kind of like, now there's still guys using 115 grain or whatever, but they're going to want a 124 grain plus P, either standard or plus P in a jacketed hollow point that either meets the FBI protocols, which is it's online. You can find it online. It's a whole level of things. Now, not everybody cares about that. A lot of them will do,
that's like the gold standard.
It is, and it's because when we went from the 40, for a
Yes.
couple years ago,
Yeah.
everybody was doing 40 Smith & Wesson. That was the goal. I mean, I had my Glock 23. I love that thing because during the Obama ammo rush, which everybody forgets, you could still get 40 cal everywhere. You could sit in Walmart on the weekend and get your 40. But so everybody kind of went away from that because they knew that the newer 124 grain plus Ps or the 135 grain plus Ps were getting similar, if not better performance. And that was justification for everybody to switch. I do see some people going with the 147s. And then, Hornady has the 135 plus P that does real well. So you see that's kind of like the standard in pistol rounds. Rifle rounds, you'll see the bonded solid base rounds, the 62 and 64 grain. Which we actually do have a round that we're still got to make it, but we submitted for the FBI. We won that round. We came in as a secondary, so whenever the other company doesn't make it, we can kind of drop in and jump on that. So it's an excellent 64 grain BSB. But for a rifle round, it kind of varies, and that's where it gets a little hairy. Is like we'll talk snipers. We've got a lot of guys that are still running 7.62 or 308, match rounds in their guns. I talked to an agency the other day that's running a 6.5 Creed, open tip match, and I'm like, ooh, guys, like at 85 yards out of a 22-inch gun, I mean, you're screaming, man. Yeah, you're running, that bullet's screaming. And, it's good. I'm like, okay, it probably is until it isn't. So we do see a lot of that, and that's where educating the community on, what do you really want? The American Sniper Association, you've got a couple other guys out there that are doing, a lot of former law enforcement guys that are trainers now are doing the Lord's work, so to speak, in that. And I'm kind of trying to jump on board because I have that product that meets that requirement. But yeah, so rifle duty rounds, you kind of see it's all over the place.
And like most police departments are choosing that pistol round off of the FBI standard, and then the rifle round they're kind of going off.
Yeah,
of.
and there's still a standard, but it's like. It's going to be like spear gold dots or it's like that's, and I want to tell you a fun thing is like right now, and especially during the last 2 years, it's like what is available.
Yeah.
What can I get? I mean, I just got emails today like these companies that are like, hey man, we're not going to get it's just like, hey man, you're not going to get a suppressor from this company because they just got a $10 million order for the government. Like, hey man, I cannot get Winchester rounds. And I'm just using that name as I'm throwing it out there. So that means if that company was using Winchester duty rounds, guess what they're not using next year? They're going to go to the next thing. They're going to test them out, but like that is.
Well, there's a lot that will meet that requirement. So.
Absolutely. I mean, a good standard duty round that people are using for law enforcement or self-defense is pretty much, there's a lot of them out there. It's not hard to find. But the other thing that what I don't find interesting is that people don't train with their self-defense / duty rounds as much. I'm not saying load up 75 rounds and go blasting, but you should know how your pistol operates, with a duty round.
Yeah, like on my
self-defense
34, there's a big deviation between 115 and 124 grain, like
significant, yeah.
like 6 inches at 25 yards. Yeah. Like
you need to know that. Yeah,
yeah,
people need to know that.
It's good info to have.
It's science, right?
Yeah, and people also don't realize when like a police department buys ammo, they're not buying like 3 cases. I mean, they're buying 2 or 3 pallets of ammo because they're
50,000 rounds or 60,000 rounds.
Because they're going to shoot gold dot for training.
Exactly.
So.
And that's kind of like, so what my, like, kind of like where I come in as far as like equipment and stuff is I do have the opportunity, whenever it's funny because I post stuff on Instagram and I'll be like, oh, this is my gun. Everybody's going to get pissed. And like I had yesterday is like the Vortex UH1 or whatever. Everybody's like, I don't like that optic. I'm like, dude, I've had the opportunity to go out and see different agencies and see different people. And I see what works and what doesn't work. And I'm like, it's a solid optic, man. Yeah. People are like, oh yeah. I'm like, dude, like Vortex is killing it right now. Like, they are killing it. Steiner's coming out with some cool stuff.
Yep.
A lot of those companies, like it's like we talked about, the level of innovation that's coming out of requirements from government solicitations is driving that.
Yep. We're in the golden era of a lot of stuff right now. Like we talked about the last podcast that we aired was about 3D printing.
Oh man, 3D printed suppressors.
3D
oh
yeah.
Oh dude,
that's
like
crazy.
Everyone's like Daniel Defense has them. PWS has some. SIG's making.
Oh yeah, that's right. SIG's ones are 3D printed. I was playing with one yesterday.
Yeah.
Their new SLX or whatever it is. The pressure reduction can, yeah, it's 3D printed, I think.
Yeah, and just allowing companies to rapid prototype stuff is allowing them to get stuff to market faster at a lower cost because they're not having to do 300 iterations of a mold or of a CNC, precision cut item. That they're able to get this stuff out faster. And so we're seeing stuff in like the new stuff coming from Vortex that they're fielding for the Army for their future weapons program is absolutely nuts. Like, we're going to put this is the brain. The brain goes on top. Like, what?
Science.
And it's also, it's like some of these smaller companies that people like kind of like, oh, like Vortex is like all of a sudden they're like, now we're rocking it. I mean, they're 1 to 10, they're 1 to 6. I mean, Night Force is still like, I mean, all those state companies are always making great stuff, but you do see, some companies are setting the bar way up here, and some people are kind of bringing the bar down, and you got to just kind of balance it out. Red dots, look at like Red dots.
Just
enclosed
the past 5 years.
It's like where 3 years ago, nobody was doing closed emitter. I mean, not any scalable level.
Yeah, 1 to 10.
That's kind of like the
People
standard.
were mounting T2s on ALG, 6-second mounts and stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah,
or on Baylor mounts from Raven.
And they were serious about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
During the customer appreciation thing last weekend, did you see Lou's blaster? He's carrying a T1 on a Glock.
On a Baylor.
Yeah, and he's like, "This is my go-to," and I was like,
Somebody makes a piece for that.
Yeah, dude, and that's what he's rocking. He's like, "I love it," and he's like, "People always give me shit," and I was dying laughing because he's like, "Look at this," and I was like, "Nice."
The dudes that were running those were running them so hard that they were breaking the dials on it. The brightness dials on the side, the little rotary knobs, because it's not. It was meant to be mounted on an AR or whatever, not reciprocating. Yeah. So they were. There's several instances of those dials just like free spinning. Yeah.
That's crazy.
I mean, but they're putting 10 to 15,000 rounds.
Yeah. And you can see like these things are not like. And I go back like optics and suppressor. Like suppressors are which other word I use? It's a failable item. Like it's just like brakes on a car. It is not meant to last forever. Your barrel on your gun is not meant to last forever. You know what I mean? These are things that you would replace. And I know it's for the average consumer. It's like, oh man, I spent a $200 tax stamp. But guess what, man? That's why they make Surefire RC2s and NT4s. That's where the Knight stuff comes in. Mm-hmm. If you want something that you're going to hand down to your kid and your trust, that's what you want. If you buy, like a little titanium can for your thing, it's super light and super cool. It may not last as long as, a Surefire RC2.
That's one of the reasons.
It's all a balancing act, man.
Yeah. That's why the RC2 one, the contract was one of the big reasons is durability. They're
it lasts.
Yeah, they're a tank.
And like you said earlier, NT4, marine proof.
Exactly. Man. If it's marine proof, it's everybody else proof.
Yeah.
That's like the standard.
We have 2 Marines here. We can prove that.
We can prove that for sure.
That's the standard.
Eric, dude, thanks for taking the time today.
No, man, I appreciate you guys having me and talking about this stuff and being able to kind of like share my experience. Although it's a little humbling because I know there's like some really cool people in the industry that are doing some cool stuff, but I get to see stuff from a different light, and I like to share that with people that listen to it.
It's awesome.
For our viewers and our listeners, if they're LE or Mill and they're looking to get a hold of you, where can they find you?
You can find me. I got my own Instagram page. I got my own LinkedIn. Honestly, like it's just Eric Luley. If you search me up, I'll have all my stuff on there. Or you can just shoot me an email to my RUAG address, and we'll get you taken care of.
All right, so, and we'll have contact info on our show notes
for sure. I will be willing to help out anybody, man, if they have questions or anything like that.
All right,
doesn't matter, civilian or government. Just like at least try to help them out.
All right, we'd appreciate it. And for those viewers and listeners out there, you know what to do. Hit the bell, subscribe, follow, leave us a 5-star review. If you've listened all the way here, don't leave us a 1-star review. Come on. Seriously,
I'll find you.
It was a good episode, right?
It was a great episode.
Give me at least 2. Yeah, you're going to get at least 2 or 3.
Yeah.
But we appreciate your support, your listens, your shares, your follows, and tune in next time for possibly some stuff from Shooter Symposium.
The BTO Roadshow,
right? Yeah,
the BTO Roadshow. Are you going to be out there?
I am not. Unfortunately, I leave here. I got to go to AUSA. So it's a different roadshow. I'll be in a suit and tie.
Okay.
So
Tell
that's probably the
hi.
first time you'll ever see me in a suit and tie.
Tell our buddies from B. Myers we said hi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I hope he comes over there to mess with the Steiner guys in my booth.
Awesome. We appreciate it.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Later.